Friends, I want to tell you about a man I served with for 4 years. In 4 years, he did not speak a single word. Not one. Not good morning. Not his own name. Not even when he was injured during a training drill and the medic begged him to say where it hurt. He just pointed. We called him Ghost. Not out of cruelty. We just didn't have anything else to call a man who never told us who he was. For 4 years, everyone on that base had a theory. Some said he was hiding from something. Some said he simply couldn't speak. One rumor even claimed he'd taken a vow. And then came his last day in the Army, his retirement, after 26 years of service. And on that day, in front of all of us, Ghost finally spoke. What he said changed how every single one of us understood the word duty. So friends, today, let's understand this story properly, from the beginning. Who was this man? Why the silence? And what made him finally break it? This is Honor Tales. To understand the silence, we first have to understand the man. I arrived at the base in my early 20s. Ghost was already there, older, maybe in his late 40s. And here's the first strange thing. Nobody could tell me when he'd arrived. The oldest soldiers on base said he'd always been there. Now, in the Army, every man has a story. Where you're from, why you joined, the girl back home, the family, the dream. Stories are the currency we trade at night when the lights go out. Ghost traded nothing. And yet, and this is important, he was not unfriendly. Think about that for a second. We usually assume a silent person is cold, angry, hiding something dark. Ghost was the opposite. If your boots were falling apart, you'd find a new pair by your bunk the next morning. No note. If a young recruit was crying from homesickness, Ghost would sit beside him, not saying anything, just sit, until the kid stopped shaking. If someone was struggling on a run, Ghost would silently slow down and run beside them, so they wouldn't finish last alone. So, friends, here is our first real question. A man who clearly cared so deeply about people, why would he refuse to speak to a single one of them? That question sat with me for 4 years. Now, whenever humans don't understand something, what do? We invent explanations, and the base was full of them. Theory 1. He physically couldn't speak. This was the popular one. Maybe an injury, maybe something he was born with. It made sense until the day a visiting officer dropped a heavy crate and Ghost instinctively opened his mouth to shout a warning, and then stopped himself, caught the word in his throat, and swallowed it. He could speak. He was choosing not to. That changed everything. Theory 2. He was hiding from the law. But friends, this doesn't survive basic logic. You cannot serve 26 years in the United States Army while hiding from anything. Every record is checked, every background examined. If Ghost was hiding, the Army would have found him long ago. So we throw this theory out. Theory 3, the one I started to believe. It was a promise, a vow of silence, to someone or about something. But to whom? And why? The problem with all 3 theories was simple. We had no evidence. We had a kind, silent man and an empty space where his reason should be. And in that empty space, we just kept guessing until his last day filled it in. 26 years. That's how long Ghost served. On the day of his retirement, the base held a small ceremony. A folded certificate, a handshake from the commanding officer, a few of us standing in a loose half-circle. The officer read out Ghost's record. And friends, this is where the first shock came. Because Ghost's record was extraordinary. Decades of spotless service. Commendation after commendation, almost all for the same thing: looking after other soldiers. Mentoring, volunteering for the hardest, most thankless duties so younger men wouldn't have to. The kind of service that never makes the news, but holds an entire unit together from the inside. The officer finished. He shook Ghost's hand, and then he did something unusual. He looked at this silent man and said gently, "It's your last day, soldier. You don't owe the Army your silence anymore. If there's anything you've ever wanted to say, now would be the time." We all held our breath. And then Ghost cleared his throat, a sound most of us had never heard, and he spoke. His voice was rough, quiet, careful, like a door that hadn't been opened in years. "I had a younger brother. He wanted to serve more than anything in the world." He paused. The whole base was silent now, but a different kind of silent. He never got the chance. He got sick, very young, before he could ever wear the uniform. And the night before he passed, he made me promise something. Ghost looked at the certificate in his hands. He said, "Serve for both of us, and do it quietly, not for the medals or the speeches or for people to know your name. Do it for the soldier next to you. Promise me you'll let your work speak, and you'll keep your mouth shut." Ghost looked up at all of us. So I did. For 26 years, I let my work speak. Every pair of boots, every late-night run beside a struggling kid, that was him. That was my brother serving too. And a promise? A promise to the dying isn't something you break just because it gets lonely. Friends, stop and think about what we'd been getting wrong all those years. We thought the silence was about hiding. It was about honoring. We thought it was a man with no story. He had the deepest story on that entire base. He was just living it instead of telling it. We thought Ghost was an empty nickname for an empty man. But he wasn't haunting anyone. He was carrying someone. Every quiet kindness we couldn't explain, the boots, the company during homesickness, the slowing down so no one finished alone, that wasn't just Ghost being nice. That was a teenage boy who never got to serve, serving anyway. Through his older brother's hands. For 26 years. The promise wasn't a cage. It was a way to keep someone alive. So the real question was never, why won't this man speak? The real question was, who was he speaking for all along? People think honor is loud, medals, salutes, speeches on a stage. But the most honorable man I ever served with proved the opposite. He showed us that the loudest form of loyalty can be completely silent, that you can keep a promise so faithfully that you become it. After the ceremony, Ghost, and we finally learned his real name that day, though I'll let him keep that one, shook each of our hands, still barely speaking. But as he passed me, he stopped. And he said the only words he ever said directly to me. "Take care of the new ones.
quietly. And then he walked out the gate, 26 years later. And somewhere, I have to believe, a younger brother walked out beside him. Finally finished. Finally home. I'm telling you his story now, out loud, because he never would. Maybe that's how the promise finally gets to rest. This has been Honor Tales. If this moved you, do one quiet thing for someone tomorrow, and tell no one. That's how you honor a man like Ghost. Until next time, let your work speak.